Okay, so hello, good evening. Welcome to what's being described as Treehab in the chat. Yeah, we're going to talk about something which, just let me chair up a bit, is perhaps a little bit different, and it's going to be a interesting kind of journey through sort of mental health aspects of bonsai. And it's something which I don't know where it's going to go. I've got a few little notes written down, but we're just going to try and just see where the evening takes us. Hopefully, we've got two very special guests to join us later by the magic of Skype. We've done a few test runs and it all worked out, but needless to say, there will be some technological hiccups. As this is a little bit different from other streams, you might feel a bit weird about writing in the chat, but please don't hesitate to ask questions. And basically the same kind of rules apply. Just feel free to have some banter. This is a safe space. We don't want people to be laughing. I know you won't, and things like that. But yeah, if you do have any questions about anything, we will kind of like look at answering them. And as long as it's on topic, we're not going to talk about any of the how we do bonsai. Today's we're talking about why we do bonsai, and I'm going to talk about some personal things and some reasons why I got into bonsai, reasons why other people got into bonsai. One of the things I want to just point out right from the start is that not looking for sympathy or any type of I feel so sorry for you or this, that, or the other. Like, this is not what it's about. This is it's about taking positivity from difficult life experiences and understanding how people get into bonsai. And how bonsai can help them through it. So any kind of like sympathy will be ignored. That's not what we're looking for here. It's just sort of focusing on the positive aspects of things and positive aspects of things such as death and depression and how we can get out of them. Not that you can get out of death, but other people's death, grief and such like. So yeah, just want that to be sort of put out there right from the start. So it's not flood the chat with sympathetic messages. Talk about your own issues if you want. Get things off your chest. That's not a problem. But yeah, there's just no like massive amounts of sympathy for me or for anybody else, please. Right. So yes. So one of the things that's one of like the goals of me doing bonsai and sort of teaching it and things like that, and doing these live streams and blog posts in the past and stuff on social media is to get people to look at bonsai as more than just form, more than just pretty shapes. It's more than just something that looks attractive. If you want stuff like that, then that's fine. I can just print you off a 3D model of one of these pictures, and you never have to one of these trees. Then you never have to water it, you never have to clip it, you never have to do anything to it. If that's what you want, then that can be arranged. Bonsai is more than that. It's a journey. For wanting to try, not try and sound too self-helpy and too kind of psychologically. I mean, which this stream might end up being a little bit like that. This is kind of like, this is genuine stuff, but it is a journey. The journey that we take through bonsai is the same as the journey that you take through life, and it's the same that the journey that the trees take as well, through their life and through their life as bonsai. So one of the goals that I've got is to really sort of show people that there is more to it than just wiring, repotting, making them look pretty. Okay, there's deeper aspects to bonsai, and this is kind of like one of them. So we're going to look at that. Now, there's no need to go into too much detail about the benefits of working of gardening and being around greenery and plants and things like that. Everybody knows that. I mean, there's plenty of scientific evidence about that, and you go online and there's all sorts of sort of scientific documents out there that scientifically prove that there is benefits to work to touching green things, to being around green things. Not just mental health benefits, but actual physical benefits. For example, the Japanese forest bathing, Shinrin Yoku, it's called, which was like a therapy that was developed in the 1980s in Japan, because Japan has quite a high rate of kind of like suppressed mental illness, because of the way that the society is, the intense pressure that people get put under and things like that, and just the intensity of Japanese life. And this sort of Shinrin Yoku, which is basically called forest bathing, basically takes people out, puts them in the forest, and just lets them bathe in the atmosphere of the forest and being around it. And there was plenty of scientific studies that proved that stress was reduced. So like the hormones of stress were measured to be reduced. The immune system was boosted, blood pressure was reduced, sleeplessness disappeared, and things like that. So being around greenery, being around trees, it's proven to be beneficial. There are, projects all up and down the country, up around the world, which use gardening as therapy for mental health illnesses. So there's no need to go into too much of that. But basically, what we're doing is that Japanese forest bathing, just on a miniature scale. So the benefits might be slightly less because the trees are smaller, but we're still getting those benefits. One of the things, you shouldn't really sort of talk about this, but one of the things that they don't say, I'm going to, because it's just my sense of humour, they don't say a lot about with the Japanese forest bathing, is that there's a lot of people in Japan who just disappear off into the forests when life gets a little bit too stressful. And there's quite a common way of ending one's life, but we're not going to go that far. And it would be quite difficult to do that in a bonsai forest. But anyway, we'll get back on track. So we should be talking about suicide and things like that. So yes, the goal, but it's British sense of humour. What can you do? As I said, the goal of what we do here is to look at bonsai as more than just form, and talk about why people do bonsai. And there are a number of reasons why people do it, and it might not just be one reason that people kind of get into bonsai and do it. But mental health is one of those reasons. Other reasons could be about exhibiting trees, the thrill of winning awards, and exhibiting and sort of putting your work out there. Some people get into it for ego, to show off. Some people do it for friendship, the social aspect to it. You see that with a lot of bonsai clubs. Some people do it for profit. Some people have to do it to make a living. So there's lots of reasons why. There's all these different threads of why people do bonsai. But one of them, and something that's come up time and time again with conversations with various different people around the country, and some people who, at first glance, you wouldn't think of it as being an issue for them, is of mental health. They got into bonsai, or bonsai has been a solid rock for them through difficult times. And it's actually saved their lives. It has, sort of brought them back on track and things like that. And so it's surprising how common a reason it is. And just announcing that we only announced on Sunday night that we were going to do this stream. And plenty of people have sort of got in contact and said, well done, thank you very much. I struggle with mental health difficulties, and bonsai has been a saviour for me, and all these different things. So there's clearly, a lot of people out there who've come to bonsai through difficulties in their life and through mental health issues, and it's really sort of helped them through. And so it seemed like it's something I've as I said, I've written about it in the past. I've spoken to people about it on kind of like personal, like one-to-one conversations and things like that. And it's been mentioned in podcasts and things. One of the Mirai asymmetry podcasts, I think with Todd Schlafer, they talked about mental illness, and how the benefits of doing bonsai. I've spoken about it briefly in the few podcasts that I've done. But now this is a chance, just particularly with the lockdown, the stress that everybody's sort of feeling because of lockdown. It just seemed like an appropriate thing to do. So that's the reasonings behind it. As I said, the lockdown is causing a lot of stress for a lot of people. But one of the things that's been really beneficial for me during this lockdown, and I do feel quite guilty about it, is the fact that I've been able to stay at home and work on my tree so much. And so actually it feels a little bit kind of guilty that I'm not feeling that stress as much as other people. You see other people, you look online and speak to a few friends that I have that are non-bonsai related, and they're feeling the pressure of it all. I'm kind of lucky in the situation that we're at with sort of family life and things like that. It's not too bad, and so it did feel kind of like a bit guilty that we're not feeling stressed. But bonsai is a practice that during this type of situation, where it's the solitary aspect of bonsai and the being in touch with nature really comes into into effect, and it becomes a very, very sort of powerful thing. So it's realistically, I mean, really, a lot of us should, if we spend enough time around our trees and working on them, the effects of the kind of like the COVID related, the lockdown related stress should be reduced. And I do know, like, some other people that I know, nurses work in the health service, key workers, and they're obviously it's a stressful period for them, and so working and sort of doing bonsai has been a saviour for them. So it's definitely been a stress test for people's lives, and I think that those of us in the bonsai community who are kind of like deeply attached to our trees and are actually kind of getting time to sort of spend with them are actually looking at this as being, thank God we do bonsai, and all those people who were laughing at us for fiddling around with little trees, it's like, who's laughing now? So yeah, it's definitely one of those. It's something where it's kind of like an appropriate time to talk about it, and so yeah, that's one of the reasons why we want to kind of do it. So I think the kind of like the thing I want to sort of how I want to kind of like broach it is from a personal perspective, and then obviously we're going to talk to a couple of other people who have had issues in their life and how bonsai's kind of like helped them through it. But for me, my personal kind of like path into bonsai came about. I got into bonsai when I was 3 years old. First time I did it was out in Japan, and so my path into bonsai and becoming a bonsai professional was quite circuitous and different from perhaps other people. And my background, my parents, they divorced when I was very young. My mother kind of remarried when I was like 3 years old, so I had no kind of like real recollection, but clearly there was some residual effects from that, I would imagine. And then when we were when I was like 3 or 4 years old, we moved up to Yorkshire and had an idyllic life. We lived in this little village in North Yorkshire. It was beautiful. Grew up in the countryside, playing in fields, riding horses, putting ferrets down my trousers, going fishing, all that kind of stuff. And it was beautiful. So I had that was kind of like, I think, where my enjoyment of nature came from, very much so. And then around about the age of sort of 10, everything went wrong. My father walked out on a very well-paid job at the height of a recession. We lost our massive house, 2 cars, loads of Christmas presents, and we moved to this crappy little house in the local town, and we went onto the poverty line. It was a struggle for a number of years. Eventually, my father found some work, and he worked his way up and things like that. Then, like the age of 13, 14, he moved away for work. My older brother went off to university, and my mother just tore all the ligaments in her knee. So I basically I ran the house from the age of 14. That caused a lot of anxiety issues with me, a lot of stress, and basically ended up taking a year off of school, which was actually quite beneficial for me, like in some aspects, because it didn't affect my schooling. I still got great grades and everything, but during that time, I sort of really developed a love of gardening. So I was, pottering around in the garden all the time. I couldn't really leave the house because going out and being around other people brought me out, and I had this sort of physical manifestation of, this came out in blotches whenever I was stressed. And for 6-7 months, they were treating it as a physical problem until they kind of like got me onto some therapy, and that helped. But you got back to school. But during that time, the only thing that I was really enjoyed doing was just pottering around in the garden. So I was doing that. Anyway, kind of like started to get better, and things stabilised. I went back to school. Was a bit depressive, very much, into the Alona, Smiths, The Cure, being kind of a angsty teenager. I did that phase for a long time. And there was this just kind of like cloud of depression just over me the whole time. And that cloud never really lifted until I started doing bonsai, basically. So that kind of just went through my university life. I actually wanted to be a gardener when I was sort of going through careers advice, and stuff like that. They asked me, what do you really enjoy doing? I said, I want to be a gardener. That's what I enjoy doing. And my careers advisor, when I was like 15, said, no, you can't do that. You're too intelligent for that. Which at the time I didn't really think anything of it, but now looking back was kind of like, that's just terrible advice and terrible sort of thing to say to people. And I kind of got sort of pushed into doing A levels and going off to university, which I didn't mind because I mentioned previously I studied physics and stuff like that, so that wasn't a huge issue for me. I did enjoy kind of the theoretical side of physics. I didn't enjoy the maths, to be honest. And so university was a struggle for that reason. But I struggled through it. I persevered. I wanted to quit after the first year, but I was like, no, I've got to stick this out, and just kind of kept smashing my head against the wall. Obviously some depression issues came up because of that, but got through it. And I got a degree by the skin of my teeth. I got a Desmond, which for Americans is a 2-2, which means nothing again, but yeah. And I was so stressed at that point from all the study that I did, and working on computers for my final year thesis. I was on computers for 12 hours a day, just smashing my head against the screen, just trying to get this program that I was writing to work. Eventually it did, and the results that came out were fantastic, and that helped me get my degree. But I was just like, no more. I never want to sit in front of a computer again. And now look at me, I'm sat in front of a computer. And wanted to get as far away from that world as possible, so I ran away to Japan. Basically, wanted to live in a foreign country. What could be more foreign than the UK than Japan? Left across there. Got a job teaching English. It was 2002. It was the World Cup year. I thought I'd get to see lots of World Cup games. I only managed to see one. It was the worst game of the World Cup, England versus Sweden, and I paid over £1,000 for the ticket. So that was pretty much a disastrous outcome. But during that the year that I was there, like for the first 6 months, I basically was just kind of drinking most nights. I hated the life that I was kind of sort of falling into, chasing girls, drinking a lot, just living like a completely empty and meaningless life. And I was just getting older and more tired, and it was just awful. I was going nowhere. About halfway through, I was like, right, I've got to do something. I've got to do something Japanesey. And I came to Japan because it's a foreign country. I need to do something. And so I went on a tour. I was like, what can I do? What can I kind of recreate? What have I always liked doing? And I was like, gardening. Okay, well, what's a Japanese form of gardening? Bonsai. Okay, boom. So I went on a tour of bonsai nurseries around Tokyo, and that was when essentially everything changed. I saw these trees, I saw how incredible they were, how mysterious they were. That was one of the things that really sort of stuck with me. Was like, how on earth can these trees be 400, 500 years old and still live in this pot? How can this massive, powerful tree be in such a small, contained environment? Was like one of my first impressions, and that stuck with me for a while. And there was just this instant resonance. And I started going along to a Sunday school that the chief, Mr. Kobayashi, was running. But even then, I was still having a lot of issues with kind of, I felt everybody was laughing at me because I couldn't speak Japanese. I had no idea what they were saying. So every time anybody laughed, I thought they were laughing at me. I was all just I didn't know what I was doing. It was just a mess to begin with. And so I ended up kind of drifting away from it a little bit. Then I left Japan and went on a year of travelling. Well, not a year, it was actually 3 months of travelling with a good friend. So I was, okay, another fresh start. Let's go travelling, I'll go off and I'll find myself and I'll do that traditional thing, and here we go. But all this time there was still this black cloud of just kind of like depression. The only time that it ever kind of really lifted was when I was working with trees. But even then, it was always just tainted by that kind of like that paranoia and the anxiety that people were laughing at me. So I was travelling around, and I bought a book which basically changed my entire life, and that was the Tao of Physics, which was written in the late 60s, 70s, I think it was, and it is a really interesting comparison and discussion about the similarities between Eastern philosophies and religions, so Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, all these different kind of ideas and things that are around in the Eastern world, and modern physics, ideas that come up in quantum physics, and the similarities between the two are incredibly incredible. So, sorry, I was just checking the stream there. And there was a line in that which really just kind of like resonated so much, and it sort of changed the kind of like my way of thinking, and that was about the unity and mutual interrelation of all things, and the oneness of the universe. Okay, and this is a central kind of like tenet to Buddhist thinking, and also to a lot of physics. And when I read it, I realised that what I'd been looking for through studying physics, and the way I'd been looking at the universe was looking at it from the wrong direction. And what I'd actually been looking for was to look at it from a completely different direction. And the only time I ever kind of like really found that was through this slightly more in contact with nature approach, and looking at it through a more kind of like Buddhist or a more Eastern type of perspective, where it's more about experiencing rather than thinking. It's about doing and being rather than sitting down and trying to calculate it out, which is what I'd been doing with physics. And so I read that book, it just blew my mind. I wasn't drinking too much, I wasn't smoking any substances or anything at the time, so it was just genuinely kind of like a mind-altering experience. And then I decided there and then I wanted to do bonsai. And so I came back to the UK after some more time travelling, making sure that it was the right thing to do, and came back to Japan, started doing the apprenticeship. And there were a lot of difficulties to doing that. The trials and the tribulations of doing an apprenticeship are, it's just crazy. But every time anything difficult happened, I would just get up, go out and walk around the trees, and just be around them for half an hour by myself. And then no matter what the chief had been saying to me, no matter what all these stresses were around, it just disappeared. I was doing my own miniature forest bathing. And if it wasn't for them, I would never have been able to sort of continue through the apprenticeship. It was the trees that kind of that brought you through it, and that building up of that relationship is something. The relationship between the people and trees is one of those intrinsic parts of what makes bonsai so good for mental health, and what differentiates it from gardening. So yes, there's benefits to being to doing gardening and being around trees and stuff, but the relationship that you build up with trees and that relationship over time is both positive and negative for mental health. So one of the things we'll look at later is the kind of like the negative aspects of mental health. So anyway, I went through the apprenticeship, and a few years kind of into it, I was kind of like comfortable with the world and comfortable with everything. I started to kind of be able to work and not be conscious of what I was doing, and kind of just drift off into subconscious. And it was sort of during that time, late at night, wiring, going through a tree, that you kind of I started to see all these connections about why I actually was doing bonsai, and how I'd come to it. None of this was like a conscious thought process. It just sort of slowly started to come through subconsciously. And I started to realise I was always just looking for my place in the universe, like where I fit in, and how I interact with other people, where I fit in within that oneness of everything. I'd looked for it in physics, but not found it. But doing bonsai is where I sort of discovered it to be, because what doing bonsai teaches you is, and particularly as an apprentice, is that the world doesn't revolve around you. Modern life is all about the individual, like capitalism. I don't want to get too into that bucket of moles, but it's the capitalist society is all about the individual, all individual. Okay, and that's not true, right? When we're looking at ourselves and being as part of this interacting society, not just of people but of everything, then you have to understand your place in it. And doing bonsai as an apprentice teaches you your place. Not just talking about in the pecking order of apprentice to master and things like that, but just that you're not that important, and the trees are. Okay, and once you start to kind of understand that, and like the responsibility of looking after these trees, that's when you can start to feel this incredible pressure. And this is where doing bonsai and building up these relationships with trees can actually be sort of a little bit negative, because the pressure comes onto you. It's very intense. You mess up, you've killed trees 100 years old, right? You've destroyed 100 people's work. You know, these trees which have been worked on successively, the pressure on you to maintain that and to keep that going is intense. But under that intense pressure, you thrive or fail. And the majority of people that came in failed, just disappeared. The few people that managed to kind of like stick it out thrived under that pressure and accepted it. And that acceptance as well is a big aspect of doing bonsai, because trees die. No matter how hard you try and stop it from happening, there's always reasons why trees die. And sometimes that reason's just, you know, something that you've done yourself. Other time it isn't. I see a lot of people in the bonsai community who never accept that they're at fault, that they've done something wrong. I think it was John Naka that said trees don't die, people kill them. And to a large extent that is true, but there are certain things that happen, you know, the trees naturally do die. And just accepting that as part of the process of bonsai is very, very important. Well, then you start getting into like a slightly more deeper philosophical side of bonsai, which you can kind of get lost in a little bit, and I did that a lot, still do. But what it does teach you about, I found very much so, is life and death. Is you know, it's an essential part of bonsai. When we look at trees with deadwood, the live end deadwood, we always talk about the balance between life and death. But there's a much deeper and sort of spiritual meaning of that. And when you start to delve into that and you start to look at it and look at the hardships that the tree has been through and survived, you see that life and death basically exist within the same tree, and they're all sort of like part of one and the same. And so having that kind of understanding, and the fact that everything is kind of like impermanent, nothing ever lasts forever, is something that bonsai can teach you. And so all of your troubles, all of the issues that you have in the world, they're not going to last forever. That's one thing that bonsai taught me. The leaves on this maple, they're not going to last forever. They're going to grow and they're going to turn colour and they're going to disappear. Same as all the crap that you've got going on in your life that eventually disappears. But that concept of sort of life and death is something that, like in the Western society, we find it very difficult to talk about and discuss. But it's something that doing bonsai can actually sort of really, really help you with. And it helped me recently because the start of last year, my mother was diagnosed with a brain tumour, and it came on. It was very sudden. She was given 3 months to live, and I was the only person she could talk about death with. You know, she was given the death sentence, like, you're going to die, and neither of my brothers could really talk about it very much. But I sat there and we talked about it, accepted it all. It's fine. And then she died, She died on Wednesday night, Thursday morning, and on Saturday I was repotting trees. And that was my therapy. That was how I got through it. That was how I knew to cope with it, because what is living will die, and you have to keep that circle of life going, and just keep on kind of like working through it. So it seemed like to some people it might have seemed like a really bit callous, but it just had to be done for me, and that was just the essential part of who I am as a person, as a bonsai practitioner, as a bonsai professional, and just as a human being. And that's what bonsai's taught me. It's not like I completely forgot about the grief and I didn't get through it. The way in which I got through it was through being in contact with trees, and they helped me to kind of to push through it. So it was a difficult time, but it was also quite an easy time, because I knew what was going to happen. I knew what needed to be done, and the trees helped me through it. And so I think without bonsai I would have been in a much more difficult position to kind of to deal with those conversations that I had to have with my mother, and to deal with all the stuff afterwards, and I would be in a lot worse position to be at now. So anyway, so that's a bit of kind of like my sort of personal mental health relationships with bonsai, and there's a lot of stuff that still goes on now, both good and bad, that I'll kind of like talk about in conversations with other people. But one of the kind of the other aspects of kind of bonsai that I think is very important to mental health and attracts people who have had mental health issues is that, against talking about that kind of difficulty to accept death or sadness in modern society, where we're told that we have to pursue happiness. That is our, be all and end all of life. We have to be happy all the time. That's what our advertisements are saying. That's what everything is sort of pushing you towards. Like sadness is difficult to talk about. It's difficult to kind of like express within art forms. Obviously with music, talk about the Smiths, the Cure, Leonard Cohen. There's all sorts of different people that, music is one of those great art, one of the art forms that you can sort of talk, you can discuss sadness and it can come through. And bonsai is one of those things as well, particularly if you see, and I wrote a blog post about this in 2015, I think it was, or 14 or something. I'll put a link up at some point. And I wrote this text when I was like in 2007, I think it was like ages and ages ago, when I was like right in the middle of my apprenticeship, about how the suffering that we go on through in our lives makes it possible for us to really and truly appreciate bonsai. And you see that very much so in a lot of the bonsai professionals. When you go into their histories, they've struggled. They've lived very difficult lives. They've gone through an incredible amount of torment themselves, come out the other side, and that's helped deepen their understanding of bonsai. So from an aesthetic perspective, there is kind of like it's important to kind of understand and appreciate the difficulties that you've had in your own life, and be able to try and relate them to the images that we see. And so, like, for example, with this we talked about the life and death struggle of this taxus that we have here. That's one big aspect of bonsai, and understanding death. Okay, understanding life. And you see that quite a bit with a lot of the big conifers and things like that, and it can get a little bit kind of overpowering, and it can get a bit kind of like depressing and always talking about the struggle. And so part of the kind of like the bonsai aesthetic is to give yourself some relief from that stress of being constantly reminded that you're going to die, basically. Where was I going with this? But yeah, to kind of like you can see it in a lot of people's work. Those people who have really struggled and suffered, You can sort of see it in some of the way the trees that they've styled. You know, what I've sort of said, and maybe kind of like, you know, I have one of the things that I really like, one of the aesthetics I really like, I've spoken about it being like mochikomi in bonsai, this sense of age that you get from this high pressure environment of being, you know, kept in a pot for a long time. You know, this aesthetic, this feel that comes from not being tortured in a pot, but that containment is something that people who are sort of fresh into bonsai, people who have no sort of life experience, can't see. You can point it out to them and they're like, oh yeah, mochikomi, but they don't actually sort of see it and really understand it, because there's no sort of deeper understanding of the suffering and the trials and the tribulations that's gone on in order to achieve that for the tree. Okay. And you often see this with like super wealthy people who have always had money from an early age and have never had to work hard for a living, have never really been through any, and you can't bracket everybody into that same category, but there's just no connection with bonsai on the deeper level that most people can have who have had the normal life experiences that we all go through. And so that helps you to kind of fully appreciate bonsai. And one of the things that really sort of struck home for me about this, and really signified this, was I was at a stone convention, so a Suiseki exhibition in America years ago. I was there with this gentleman called Mr. Morimai, Seiji Morimai, who runs a big bonsai business, garden business type of thing in Japan, and he is a kind of like an expert display. He does all sorts of like you know, goes into the deeper the meanings of both Suiseki and bonsai. And we were doing this thing, and it kind of like got to a question and answer session, and somebody in the audience put their hand up and said, how do we get younger people interested in Suiseki? Now, if you think bonsai is kind of like an old, you know, kind of like tends to be for older people, then Suiseki is the niche within the niche within the niche, and the people who do tend to do Suiseki are weird, and they won't mind me saying it, because we are all a little bit weirder than a lot of people. It's like people who do Shohin. It's the same thing. I'm talking to you, John Armitage. And where was I going with it? Oh, so how do we get young people involved? And Miss Morimai's like, okay, like hands up here, who started doing Suiseki on bonsai when they were 16? A few people, you know, 30% of the people put their hands up. Who started doing it when they were 50? More people put their hands up. Who started doing it when they were 40? A few less. 30? Hardly anybody. Who started doing bonsai when they were 20? And the only people who put their hands up were the professionals. Myself, there's another guy from America there, Mr. Morimai, Bill Valvanis, we all put our hands up, and it's just like, and Mr. Morimai said, we're the weird ones. We're the abnormal ones. Not, you know, it's normal for people to come into bonsai, into Suiseki at a later age, when there is that life experience and they can understand it. Okay, it's kind of abnormal for younger people to kind of like get into it, and that really kind of like struck home, and it put a lot of those kind of pieces together for like the understanding for a lot of the aesthetics with bonsai, as well as that kind of that requirement to have suffered a little bit to kind of really get where it's at. So I've went on for a bit longer than I was expecting to. Sorry about that. So what we're going to do now is we're actually going to talk to a couple of other people about their experiences and things like that. And quite fortuitously, there was, we mentioned this on Sunday night, and either Sunday night or Monday morning, a video was released made by Ollie Sindel, who's a filmmaker who lives down in Australia. And the film that we're going to see is his. You may have seen it already. It's been shared around a lot, and it is about Alex Hammond, who is a bonsai enthusiast, and we're going to try and get him online immediately after. So we're going to watch this video and then talk to Alex. There we go.
I used to bring you sunshine. Now all I ever do is bring it down.
Are you ready, Am?
Oh, have you already started? I'm Alex. I'm a pharmacist in a mental health trust in the NHS. I live here with my beautiful wife, 2 stepkids and my son, and these are my other babies. This is Itoigawa juniper. That's a Hinoki cypress, Taxus baccata, or a yew tree. This is called Yamamomiji. It's the classic, iconic one. I mean, the attention to detail on it is amazing. The twists and turns in the trunk, the shari is lovely. This is like a privilege to be able to look after something of this quality. In my garden, there's everything from raw material to finished bonsai. I like a bit of everything. This is one that I collected from a psychiatric institution where I work, St. Clement's Asylum. There's a literal definition, which is tree in pot, or so I'm led to believe. I don't speak Japanese. There's also an artistic definition, which is trying to make something highly manipulated by man that doesn't appear to even be touched by a human hand. You want that wow factor. You've got to have something that actually moves something within you. It is a way of life for most people because we look after these trees like our children. There are trees in collections in Japan that have been in a pot for 1,000 years, allegedly. Bonsai for me is therapy. About 5 years ago, I'd say I was in a very dark place. I had a major problem with alcohol, so I had to fill my life with something else. I've got a mental health condition called ADHD, where basically my brain just never turns off. So, you know, you just delve deeper into your own mind, your negative thoughts and all that shit. When drinking gets out of control, you do it by yourself. You know, it wasn't even a social thing anymore. It was just to shut my brain off. I suffer from imposter syndrome massively everywhere in my life. I shouldn't be looking after trees that are this good, if I rationalise it, but then who should? Numbing yourself to the real world, which is what I used to use alcohol for, that's like a malevolent addiction. Whereas my addiction to bonsai makes me read more, go out on walks, talk to people more. I mean, these are all positive things. I would say I'm probably the only pharmacist I know of that walks around sectioned patients who think that I'm mad. Too much love will kill you, just as sure as not at all. Happiness is being comfortable with what you have. If you're comfortable and satisfied by what you have in life, you are happy in any given situation. Happiness is just being comfortable with the status quo. That's why I used to drink, because I wasn't happy with what was happening right here, right now. And you can escape into bonsai, or you can escape into drink or drugs.
And we are now live. So thank you, Alex. We've got him on on Skype. So yeah, it was crazy that video came out at the time. Do you how did it happen? How did the video come about?
Okay. Well, see, I'm going to have to admit I missed the when you were mentioning it on your on Sunday night. Did you say you mentioned it? Yeah. So I missed that. Basically, I'm you know, my life is full of dramas. I've been having a few dramas recently. I'm actually moving between houses at the moment. But so basically, we filmed it on New Year's Day. I get together with sort of the friends I grew up with. I get together with them on sort of Boxing Day, and this year we all met up. It was like a 20th year anniversary thing. And he pulled me over. I've known him since I was about 8 years old. And he just said, look, he does lots of like corporate commercial films. And, you know, a bit like with bonsai, I guess there's some jobs that you like doing, some jobs you don't. You know, he chops wood and carries water so that he can get to go and do a bit of so he can get a bit of forest bathing in. So I was his forest bathing. Good. But no, he just said, look, I'd be really interested. He's done a few other things with some of our other mates. Yeah. And he just said, I'd be really interested in just like coming down and having a look at your bonsai. And I thought, let's just say he's not the first friend to say something like that.
Yeah.
So I was like, yeah, cool, I'll see you.
Yeah.
And then it got cancelled a few times, and then he ended up turning up on New Year's Day, and all he had was a little handheld camera and a drone, and yeah,
well,
that all came about.
It was a very brave thing to do, you know, to talk about. I mean, we've met in person, we've spoken about it, and you know, you're not shy about talking about these kind of things. So basically, Bonsai kind of like saved your life. Would it be fair to say that? Was that a bit much?
Yeah, that might be like putting it all into a little package. what I would say is it helped. Very similar to your story, I'll be honest. It helped focus all of the negatives into something positive. Like bonsai is about creating things, really.
Yep.
Like you have material, it's soulless, really, and however good it is, it starts off a bit soulless, and you try and put the soul into it, or the tree puts a bit of soul into you. But
I think very much that is the case.
Yeah. So I mean, for instance, you know, we were talking about just while they were watching the video, we were talking about how my brain works in a strange way. I'm watching you sitting in your shed, opening up about traumatic things that have happened in your life, talking to people that you can't even see on the internet, and I find that whole thing like a journey in itself. Like for me, like if a tree dies in my garden, I've got a few friends who I'll phone to offload it, but it's like you go through this whole torment by yourself, like, and it's like, you know, when people describe to you like just before they die, their life flashes before their eyes. You see all of those little errors you may have made along the way that might have been the case or might have not been the case. Like, did I do that wrong? Didn't I do it wrong? I mean, in my case, probably more often than you. I definitely know it was me. But, you know, and that is part of my struggle with bonsai is coping with my impulsive nature. So, you know, I would go around like a bull in a china. You know, there's a picture I always show in pruning season, and I share it with my mates, that like there's a deer with like the oak leaves in its antlers. It's been rotted through them, and I was like, yeah, that is my pruning technique when I first started. You kind of just like try and do something, make it look good. But yeah, I don't even know what we started talking about, but bonsai. Yeah, it's like the journey. There's a journey even in me watching you share the stuff about yourself. That like it depends how deep you want to go into this. Like what is bonsai for me? Bonsai was a way of coping with my internal monologue. Yeah. Like what that a lot of people struggle with. I think about things over and over and over again, but I never do it. In bonsai, if I don't get up and water the trees, they will die. Yeah. So I can't just lie in bed and think about why she left me, or you know, why so and so hasn't texted me back, or you know, why someone's found this great new site and collected loads of great trees, and I don't have any of that species, and or things outside of bonsai. There's always that continuous process.
But do you ever find that pressure is too intense, that you've got to get up and do that?
No. Not the basics, not the chopping. Like it's an old. I think it's a Taoist thing. It's that, you know, you chop wood, carry water, and eventually, you know, big things happen. You've got to do the little basics. So I actually enjoy getting into that routine. Funnily enough, with the problems with alcohol, I'm a creature of habit. Yeah. So I like having those things. It's the negative aspect comes when someone gets in the way of that. Yeah. So let's say I can't water. There is only one thing I'm thinking about all day.
Yeah, you know? I mean,
and I will take that out on other people.
One of the things that bonsai can kind of negatively affect you is like the family life and things like that. So, for example, if we're going out on a summer's day to the beach, we've got 4 hours that we can do it. That's it. You can only take a 4-hour trip because you've got to get back on water. And the whole time I'm down there, I'm thinking about, are my trees watered enough? Is there anything going to happen? Have you ever found, you know, has that ever been a problem for you, do you think? Has it ever got in the way of the family?
Yeah. I mean, I've said no to going to places, just you know,
Yeah.
and you know, I wouldn't go so far as to say I lied. I'll say I've kind of bended the truth about what I needed to do that day to suit
Yeah.
being at home. Yeah, yeah. I mean, there's a whole balance thing. I mean, the whole mental health thing is a balance thing as
Yeah.
well. Like people say, you know, because I talk about this all day, every day, because it's part of my job. But everyone is on these spectrums to a certain extent. If you imagine like an orb, right, and or like a coronavirus. Let's go on topic, yeah. So coronavirus is a blob, right,
Yeah.
with little proteins sticking out on the surface. It depends on the shape of those proteins as to how it's going to interact with the rest of the world, right? So everyone's got these. Everyone is built the same stuff, right? You just stick to different things, right? Some people like me will stick to pretty much everything and then annihilate it and strangle it to death. Yeah, and then you've got other people who kind of just bounce between things, and they're quite, you know, we're all on the same spectrum. It just depends where your little spikes are, you know.
So what you're saying is you're the coronavirus of bonsai.
That's what I'm saying.
No,
Yeah.
I fully appreciate that. I mean, I bounced around from a couple of things until I found bonsai, and it's just I've stuck. So, where do you think you would be without bonsai?
I just think it's hard to say for sure.
Yeah.
I just think I wouldn't let's just say I wouldn't be talking to someone or online at night in front of loads of people. I mean, another thing about ADHD is like I don't have any qualms with talking in front of 2,000 people.
It's only about 150, so don't worry about it. It's fine.
Yeah, no, but
and you're one of them.
It's like, yeah. It's like the I don't have that shape thing. I feel I'm like an open book. So that part of it is easy. It's more the self-doubt. Like it's what I mentioned in the video is this imposter syndrome, because like he's always been my biggest advocate of you've got to stop that kind of thought process. You know, I feel like I've bodged all my exams to get where I have. I feel like if my tree comes out well, it's because I was lucky.
Yeah.
Or if it survives a repot, it's not because I did it. It's not because I repotted it properly.
Yeah.
It's because I was lucky with that one. You know, in some cases that may have been true. You know,
but do you think that self-doubt makes you err on the side of caution and is beneficial to your bonsai practice? Or
no. My self-doubt is probably it's like a driver. If you're driving, the people who are kind of, you know, the top spots that overtake you and all that kind of stuff, they're actually less dangerous than the people who will stop in the middle of the road because they may have heard a butterfly, you know. So sometimes it's not taking the action that's just as bad as taking the action. Where I would be without bonsai is I would be damaging myself in some way in order to pass the time. You know, I can remember when I was a student, I used to go on like the Rightmove kind of sites, like Rightmove or you know, like property sites, and look for houses I was never going to buy because it allowed me to get into a cyclical thought process for 12 hours at a time that stopped me worrying about what was going on. You know.
And now you just channel all that energy into trees and worried about what they're doing.
Exactly, but that's a positive thing. Like I was trying to say at the beginning, like bonsai for me is, I mean, I have a little bit of all of the people that you described. Yeah. You know, I want to have great trees because I think they look good. So I've got a bit of the ego. I've got the whole kind of nurturing myself through interacting with nature. Like I grew up on a farm. Yeah. I used to spend half my time in London, half my time on a farm, right? Every time that my family used to talk to me about nature, I wasn't interested. Wasn't interested. I wanted to drive the tractors, you know, or, you know, go into the sheds and watch cows being born. I wasn't really interested in flora and fauna unless I could eat it, you know. Yeah, that's true. So, you know, my grandfather used to get annoyed with me that I couldn't tell trees by their bark.
Yeah.
I still remember that. He got annoyed. And now I can. It's like you were talking about you come full circle to back to the gardening thing. and it was pretty similar for me, but in a in a strange way, I think to answer the first question, which I still haven't answered, without bonsai, I would be lost. I think that's where I've got to.
I'm the same. Right, okay, final question. Just got to crack on. Where do you see yourself? Like, you've changed your approach to bonsai's changed over the last 5 years. Yeah.
Yeah.
You went in at Bull in China shop. Now you're starting to slow down. Where would you see yourself in the next 5 years?
Yeah. See, this is the thing. I hope, right, that what I want from bonsai is like I'm lucky enough to have friends who are more knowledgeable about bonsai than I am. They practice at a very high level, and they've accelerated my growth in bonsai really, and helped me as a family, because otherwise I'd do the same thing in bonsai as I would do in normal life. I would zoom up, get to a massive high, and then I would crash all the time. And I still do those little bits, but it's they temper me down. Do you really need to buy another tree? Yeah. Sometimes, or I may or may not take the advice, or let's go to that show. Yeah. Let's make that trip, which is something that I would normally think about 1,000 times but never go. Yeah. So a lot of the experiences I've had, going to Spain, that was a mind-blowing, next level bonsai. My bonsai mentality went to the next level after visiting there, because, I've stopped worrying so much about just the trees. I now worry about the environment that I keep my trees and the way that I treat them, and the attention to detail. People counting the number of, like you went with the candle pinching. Like they're counting the number of needles every time they're pinching in the garden. I'm like, I don't do that. Maybe I should look at pinching more than just going, that'll do. But you don't know until you know.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, so it's I hope that I get more attention to detail.
Well, I mean, there are lots of different aspects of bonsai, and you will definitely see those people who are very OCD, and there's a few of them watching the stream tonight. I know that, but they definitely tend towards more deciduous trees and shohin particularly. That real kind of attention to, and you see that with particularly like in the States, where you've got accountants or dentists, or people who do very fine work, surgeons, and the way in which they do bonsai is very different to the way in which other people do bonsai, and there's clearly room for both. I just wanted to go back to one of the things you were going to say about you being an open book. Do you ever see that and kind of carries on from what we were just talking about, do you ever see that your bonsai that you create is ever a reflection of you as a person?
I would say definitely the stuff that I work on just by myself is pretty chaotic.
Yeah. And how would you feel about displaying that?
Absolutely fine.
And people criticising you?
Because
this is one aspect of
and this is that's what we were talking. We had a conversation earlier about some of the negative aspects of bonsai, and to me, I want to show my trees and for people to think they're good. And I probably have enough feedback to not show a tree that was sufficient. I mean, I've let's put it this way: I showed that maple, which was pretty much a top world-class bonsai, and people were coming up to me and criticising it at the show in Solia. So it's different strokes, different. I don't think I'm ever going to display a tree where it doesn't get criticism. Right? So for me, I can brush that off because I'm not in it for the prizes per se. I'm not one of those people that would give away the knighthood and say I don't want it. But what I'm saying is that's not what I do. I want to do it for the experience, and I don't think I'll ever be proficient enough that I am the best, and that is not why I'm doing this. I admire the people that can do that, because that's the pressure that I don't want.
Okay.
Basically.
Right. We'll have to say good night and thank you for joining us. There is a comment from Dean in the chat, and he calls you a fucking nutter. So thank you very much for that, Dean. But yeah, you are, and in the best way. But we're all mental, really, in our own different ways, and I think that's one of the points we try and make about this evening. So thank you very much for joining us, and thank you for being so open and honest about your issues with mental health and how bonsai's affected you, and it's all part of the discussion. Thanks, mate.
Yeah, thank you.
No worries, mate. Speak to you soon.
Peace and love.
Cheers.
Peace and love.
Thank you. Oh, there we go. And you're gone. All right. So, thank you very much, Alex. And what I learned from that was that he's the coronavirus of the bonsai world. But it was really kind of like refreshing to see that discussion just kind of like continuing. Again, like I'd spoken to Alex about his issues on a private level, and a lot of the people that Alex is kind of like that surround him have sort of said the same thing. But it was just great to see him put that video out and be open about it. Right, we're going to go to our next guest. This has been going on a little bit longer than we were hoping. So, are you there, Ian? You're going to be... pick up, boy. Right, so just calling Ian. Hey, how you doing? Just a minute. Where are you? I've just got to change something. Ian, there you are. Just got to change the source. Excuse me. Properties. Still got Alex's picture here. There we are. Okay. Right. Now you can say it.
Are we on?
Are we on? Yes, we are on. Okay, so sorry about that little technical glitch. It was just I could go into the technical details about what was happening, but I'm not. So yes, Ian Young, Bonsai Eejit, welcome to Sorry I'm a Mental Health Special Live. Gone on a bit longer than we were planning, but
I don't think anybody's complaining on the chat.
Well, I've not really looked at it, but there we go.
That's not.
So, how did you get into bonsai? I think this is probably going to be the way to kind of breach it, because yours is a very interesting story and will resonate with a lot of people.
There's quite a few on the chat that can probably see parallels to my story to their own. I started bonsai when my sister bought me one as a get well soon present. I think it was a Sarissa, believe it or not, which didn't last any more than a couple of years, but get well soon because I had been blown up in a bomb explosion in Belfast back in '93, and I had no real interest in bonsai before that. But
how old were you when this happened?
23.
So you wouldn't have really 23 growing up in Belfast. It's not really going to be a big bonsai scene, is there?
That said, I had Dan Barton's bonsai book on my shelf. Funny enough, some of his trees are
it's not on your shelf at the moment, though.
Well, no, it is. Still, there's a lot of shelves, but some of the California Bonsai Society World of Bonsai Day page at the moment. But I had the book. I had a love of nature and horticulture, thanks to my dad, who is a farmer, still 94 next month. He
going strong.
Yeah, so
working with plants.
Working in plants. He had to drive up to his house today to pick him up off the ground because he couldn't get back up again when he was down weeding the flower beds. So, fair play to the man. But basically, had a love of nature, bird watching, all that sort of stuff, but not really anything to do with bonsai. My sister had given me a bonsai as a get well soon present after. Basically, I was in the police here in Northern Ireland. Bomb explosion that resulted in me being off work for 2 years. I had physical injuries with burns and shrapnel injuries from sort of shoulder level up. But the mental side of it, the post-traumatic stress, which I suppose is topical. Everybody talks about that, and I had post-traumatic stress as a result of it. You get treatment initially. The police here were very good and had treatment initially. But I think what you find with post-traumatic stress is that it's not something that you get treatment for and you recover from it. You've got, and you're not likely to get over it. You have good. I was going to say good days and bad days. You can have a good year and a bad year, to be quite honest. And I went through the first 15 years of, trying to think when I first got, probably my first real issue with it was around 2007, 2000. And I've basically been bottling everything up for too long, and it just collapsed around me, and that was a real difficult time in my life, to be honest. So,
had you been doing bonsai up to that point?
Yeah, I started like literally from the day and hour that I had come home from hospital. I was only in for about a week. They don't like to keep it that long. I was in for a week, and I come home. My sister brought the tree round to me, and that started me on that line. She had a friend that did bonsai, had a business started. I went down, bought a Chinese elm off her, joined the club here as well, which I threw myself into heart and soul, and still do, because I'm still chairman of the Northern Ireland Bonsai Society after all these years. So that happened in August '93. My first day in the club was 10th of September. E3, going to a Craig Cousins demonstration. I can remember it well, and it's been with me ever since. And the 2 years that I was off work, I literally did something bonsai related every day. It just give you something to focus on that you don't, that I probably really needed at that time, because your head's all over the place, and I did go through a really hard time initially. Addicted to painkillers, probably you would say, and it was really bonsai that bonsai, my amazing wife, basically, that pulled me through it. And I kept it going, and I got to the stage where I suppose one of the reasons why I was so involved in the club was the fact that I wanted to give back. That bonsai had given me so much and kept me healthy that I wanted to give back, and I kept that going.
I think one of the things that we've not really touched on that much tonight is that while bonsai is quite a, I see you enjoying a nice beer there. Bonsai is quite a solitary kind of pursuit, and Alex mentioned about me just being sat here in my shed of an evening, and a lot of the mental health aspects do come from that solitary day, the daily routine. The people that are involved and the social side to it are just as important. And one of the things that I've found is meeting people like yourself, people I'd never normally come across in my daily life, and just kind of learning from them and their experiences. Do you find that has been? I used to talk about putting a lot into the club. Have you ever found that that's been an important part of the bonsai, or?
Massively. The friendships are massive part of it. A really big part of it, really, when you think about it. I would say, looking at my circle of friends, I have very few outside of bonsai, because I think we're all mad. But there is a certain madness around all bonsai people. And you talked about that, and you certainly make great friends, and you come across so many people, even within the bonsai community, that have similar issues, not necessarily post-traumatic stress, but just stress from work, or depression, or people who are getting over bereavement, for example. I have a friend there who lost, I think he's actually on the live stream tonight as well, but a friend who lost a child, which I honestly can't think of anything worse.
Yeah.
And I remember speaking to him at the funeral, and one of those things you don't know what to say. And I said, like, whenever you get yourself to a point where you feel like it, come down to me, and we'll just play with trees. And about 2 months later, he did, and he came down, and we out in my workshop here, and we worked on trees, and we sometimes we chatted about it, sometimes we didn't. Had a great afternoon. And at the end of it, he turned around and he says, "Like, that's the first time I've actually laughed in the last 2 months." And that shows you what bonsai can do. I suppose it's friendship as well, but bonsai is a great way, a great distraction. Even when I went back to work after being injured, and it was a stressful job. There's plenty of police and ex-military, and my goodness, you think of all the essential workers at the minute with COVID-19, that whenever you go to work and you have a stressful day and you come home, one of the best things is setting your work bag down at the front door, walking out the back door into the garden, and just watering your trees. The process of walking around, watering each tree. Does it need watered? How's it going? Is it a pest and diseases? The simple process is a great way to unwind, instead of coming in and snapping at the first thing that your wife says to you because you're had a shitty day. You can really come out, unwind, and come in. And the fact that you can do bonsai at any time, it's okay saying gardening is good for your mental health, and it is. Going for a walk in the forest is unbelievable mental health. I love that. But bonsai, if I feel like it, or if I feel the need, I can walk outside, lift the tree, take it into the workshop, and just sit and work on it. And it could be when it's dark outside, or it could be 4 or 5 in the morning because you can't sleep because of what's through your head. There's loads of opportunity there that bonsai gives you that other things don't, and you can just immerse yourself in it.
I've never thought of it in that way. Huh. The portable nature of it, absolutely, you can. But like, say for example, you had one of those aforementioned shitty days. You came back and you saw a load of problems with your trees. Did that ever like compound problems? Have you ever like felt the like negative aspects of it, or the pressure of bonsai adding to those stresses?
In my darkest time during this, probably, as I said, 2007, 2008, I was in a bad place. I always seen myself as mentally strong and being able to put up with all this sort of thing without any difficulty. And eventually, it's the way one of the psychologists put it to me. It's like putting a piece of paper into a filing cabinet. You keep a piece of paper in every day, but sooner or later you can't get the drawer closed, and it's going to come all out. And that's basically what happened to me then. And I found myself, even the process of wanting to go out and water was a struggle. The stress of knowing, if I don't water these trees, they die. And what happened at that point was I bought some cheap fertilizer, which I thought was organic. Turned out it was chemical. Lashed it on to conifers that I had, because I said conifer fertilizer. And basically I killed 10 of my best conifers, and quite a few flesh wounds to a few more. And that was really, it was one of those moments where you were nearly about to say, do you know what? Fuck this, I'm not doing this anymore. I'm walking away from the whole thing. But I stuck at it. Even that year in the club, I was going to the club meetings. I never missed one, rarely missed one. Would go to the club meeting, do bonsai, and come home, and really, bar watering, I wouldn't do a damn thing with my trees. The next club meeting, I was in such a bad place. But yet, being forced to go outside to water was nearly a way of putting you back out of it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
You have to, and with proper help from psychiatrists, psychologists, whatever, through work, I got the help I needed. Eventually, I had to take a medical retirement as a result of both physical and...
Yeah, so like subsequent to that, you've you kind of become a sort of semi-professional bonsai peddler, teacher. But I mean, you are, as you know, to all intents and purposes, a professional. The amount of work that the quality of the work that you put out, and the stuff that you teach is higher than a lot of people who call themselves professionals. I just mean that you're not thrown yourself into it like fully, as some people have, like myself. Have you noticed your relationship with trees has changed since then? And like, has that caused any sort of stress for you?
I suppose I'm away from home a little bit more. It's I don't do much outside of Ireland and Northern Ireland, to be honest. I keep it here. I like to see myself as a sort of teacher. I hate the word professional, but that's just me. And I suppose the stress of being away from home. I don't know how you find it, because I'm sure, like, I go on the road for maybe a week, 10 days, and do some one-to-ones with friends down south, and that's great. But you are staying in somebody else's house for a night, and you're with their family, and that's fine. And like, all the guys I work with are fantastic. I have to say that, because most of them are.
No, but they are.
But but that is stressful, and it's maybe hard for my wife as well, because I'm away for that time. So maybe that sort of stress added to it. But I suppose the pressure of producing the goods as well, when you're working on a tree and making sure that you're going to do a good job. And I don't know about you, but I'm never 100% happy with what I do. You're always striving to be better. There's a bit of stress with that, but I don't know how you cope, because you're flying to, you're away.
Not so much anymore.
I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, previously it wasn't quite so much of an issue. It was always stressful, and the one thing that I particularly found demoralising in my early part of the career was the lack of continuity. Because like how it is now, I'm working with the same people a lot of the time, seeing the same trees, and there's that continuity. And so early days, flying around and like doing like tours across America and like one-off workshops here, there, and everywhere, you give so much to the trees, you give so much to like the creation of it, but you get nothing back, because you don't build up that relationship with the trees. Whereas now, doing like, for example, workshops up at Willowbog 3 times, that's in Northumberland, in the north of England.
I know where. Hello, Peter.
And all the Willowboggers, working with essentially the same bunch of people with the same bunch of trees for 7-8 years now, 6 years, something like that, and you see this continual improvement. So there's sometimes things don't work out as planned, and sometimes they work better than planned, but you're seeing this sort of continual growth of both people and the trees, and so all of that effort that you put in is returned. And like the depressing aspect of being a professional is when that doesn't kind of like come back. But you go through this natural kind of cycle of finding the people who understand what you're trying to talk about, and you kind of like mesh ideas and things like that, and they put into practice the things that you say, and you can kind of like you work together on different levels, and so it's better. But yeah, the being away from home thing is obviously quite a stressful thing. And talking with Ryan, I mentioned we did a podcast that's going to come out at some point and things like that, but like, this is being at home and working on trees in a garden is what bonsai professionals are supposed to do. Like traveling around the world doing this, that is not really what we are supposed to be doing. And so that being able to look after your trees is on a day-to-day basis is essential for us, as well as much as it is for anyone else. So like I said at the start, like this whole COVID lockdown thing, I'm just like, long may it continue. Just how am I going to make a living from it? That's the only problem. So yeah.
Keep going. I think everybody's in an agreement that this, what you're doing now, is fantastic. And even looking at the topic, it's
well, we've got to try. It's about finding, keeping bonsai moving forward, and that's what we have to do as people as well. So, just sort of going back to your lovely wife. Without her, do you think you would still be doing bonsai?
She's actually listening in, and she's watching us in the living room.
Yeah, I'm sure she is. So, yeah, listen. Because you've every time I've been there and done a workshop, you've always said that she's been like an intrinsic part of it, and it's very true. Like in Japan, as much as anywhere really. Like behind every sort of successful like the Chief was one of the greatest examples. Akiyama, my senpai, he was very similar, and myself, like behind like every sort of successful bonsai person is their partner, their wife, their husband, who basically is supporting them, allowing them to kind of like get off and do all of these kind of things. And so, yeah, I know Alison's very much the same.
I think of some of the shit she's put up with here over the years with bonsai. It is unbelievable. It took me 25 years to negotiate getting rid of the lawn at the back of the house and just making it all bonsai. But the club workshops, and you've been here doing workshops here, and catering for 10 people that are here for a workshop, or whenever Peter Snarp's here doing the Willow Bog School, there can be 20, 25 people here. She's been an absolute bedrock.
But do you think the reason why she has been like that is because she can see how important it is to you as a person?
Absolutely, because she sees that it's what happened to me could have led me down so many different roads. Whenever I see people who have suffered from post-traumatic stress, really good friends, even in my own family, my own brother has had been shot in the troubles here through his same troubles himself. And that when you see that and how things can go, you can see people that turned to alcohol as part of this, and that's never. I know I'm sitting here having a beer, but I'm not a big drinker. It's never been an issue for me. I think bonsai has literally. You were joking earlier on because you said about bonsai saving. As bonsai saved your Alex, and another one. Probably it has. To be quite honest, it has.
Break it up a bit, yeah. You're breaking up a little bit there. I don't know why. It's all good here. Right. What else was I going to ask you? Same question I asked to Alex. Where do you see yourself doing bonsai in 5 years? Because over the time that I've known you, the way in which you've approached bonsai has changed quite dramatically. I'm not taking any credit for that, and I don't want you to suck up to me, because I know that you have learnt a lot through the Mirai live streams and just through kind of like meshing together people's ideas and your own 30, 40 years of practicing it. But like, where do you... I know. Where do you see yourself like going forward, particularly now that you've become you've taken it down that slightly professional route?
5 years from now, it's a tricky one. I have anybody who's been following my social media in the last 44 days since isolation kicked in. I've been putting pictures of trees up, and I get I suppose sentimentally attached to trees, and I suppose as a lot of professionals out there will have trees coming in and going, but a lot of the trees have been with me for the 27 years that I've been doing bonsai, not back in 40. And that's why I hold on to trees longer, and there's only so much space here, although I have created more space. But I want to see my own collection progress. I want to see bonsai in the island of Ireland, Northern Ireland, South of Ireland. I want to see it progress, and it's seen a big jump in the last 5 years, definitely. Some of the clubs that have we've got started in Dublin and Munster and out in the Wild West there at Bunratty as well. So there's a forward momentum with that. I would love to see that increase. And I know it probably sounds a bit twee because we were talking about mental health here, but I've always wanted to do something more with the mental health aspect of it. I have already done some stuff that way. Myself and a friend did a course in a New Horizons project here, working with people with mental health issues, and we did that, and that was very rewarding for me and them, I think. And I have done some talks, but I think trying to promote. It'd be great to get some sort of movement going on this, where bonsai enthusiasts throughout, suppose I could say the UK, further afield if needs be, could come together and maybe do this in some way to promote within groups, because they're always crying out for speakers to come in and do it. Even if you go and do a talk for 20 people that are having mental health issues, and one of those people take it up as a hobby, my God, the impact that could have is amazing. You know, using my own experience from that, and like there's a long list of people, you know, and you tend to gravitate towards people that are similar to yourself, and a lot of them are on the chat tonight or listening to the stream now, who have been in stressful jobs, whether it's the same as mine or similar to mine or whatever, and you know, they'll all say the same thing. Bonsai has, it's a bit cliche, but bonsai has saved my life. It really has given me something to focus on.
Yeah, it's a difficult thing, which is why I'm really appreciative that you've come out and, you know, you're sort of speaking about it, and I know that you're quite happy to do, and same with Alex. It's just, you know, making sure that it's okay to talk about these things, and like modern society is getting a lot more kind of open and honest about the kind of the difficulties of mental health that we're facing, and just trying to find ways going forward to try and balance things for people. But I think it's like bonsai needs to be a bit of a sort of a safe space, which is why I always find I sort of mentioned it a little bit with Alex, like the kind of like the toxic atmosphere that you can get with a lot of people in bonsai, like the insecurities that you find, people just like tearing other people's trees to pieces. I mean, it's fine to disagree with like the aesthetics of other people and all the techniques. You know, it's absolutely fine to do that, but like we lack a kind of civilized discussion about it. People just fly into these fits of rage, and I think that's just symptomatic of modern society more as much as anything. Would just be nice to kind of like, you know, have exhibitions where you can go around and not feel like everyone's just having a go at everything, or just try to tear other people down, and just try and build other people up, because that's how it should really be. I mean, it's the act of displaying a tree, I think, is very personal. Have you ever like sort of shied away from that because it's been such a personal thing from a person, like
if I really didn't take criticism,
there's a difference between like constructive criticism and just
absolutely. Yeah. But you know, there's some people have a dig for no reason. Jeez, nearly happened in the chat tonight. But you've got people who I'm trying to think how you would best word this. Everybody does bonsai their own way, and there's no right or wrong way. If somebody wants to take a tree from raw material and work it right through, and humble material and work it, there's no problem with that. If somebody wants to go out and buy, not a finished, there's no such thing as a finished bonsai, but if somebody wants to go out and buy a top quality specimen tree and do their bonsai that way, there's no problem with that either. The whole exhibition side of it, bonsai is an art, and to me it should be exhibited. It's a bit problematic for up here in Ireland trying to get trees further afield to do that at times, but I'm always very keen to promote exhibitions to the guys and girls over here to try and push that side of it. But the negative side, the politics pisses me off. Politics, no matter what level, whether it's actual government or whether it's in bonsai, you know, I know it's impossible to get away with. It only takes two people to have a disagreement, you know, an argument. But you know, that sort of does annoy me. It'd be great to see bonsai pushing forward. And until they take the politics out of bonsai in the UK, it's
the same everywhere.
It's going to be the same.
It's like you say, it's just human nature. So
it is indeed. Yeah, but you know, when you look at my goodness, even listening to Ryan and Michael in the latest Mariah podcast, there, you know, two professionals that live pretty close together. When you think that should be in competition, but it's not. It's actually supporting each other, and you've seen that on the stream or the chat there. That's the way it should be. Bonsai there's more people wanting to do bonsai than there is people that are teaching it. So,
Well, yeah.
so show the love.
Yes, absolutely. Just try and. I mean, that's one of the things we're trying to kind of like foster and engender here. Just a bit of a community idea, a bit of a safe space to talk about some of the weirder things in bonsai, and like as my taste and a lot of the things that I do, just they're not kind of like necessarily conventional and accepted. But frankly,
But you don't care.
No, I haven't. I got past that many years ago. I stopped caring about what other people thought about me during my apprenticeship. It was just kind of like, I mean, I went through phases of it, of like coming out and becoming a professional and thinking about acceptance from a wider public and things like that. And if you get into that kind of like competitive sort of situation, if you start comparing like how many followers you have on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube and stuff like that, it's just designed to make you feel unhappy and depressed, and so I don't care. It's like you said about the trying to affect one person. If you can just affect one person, then he can then. That's all we can try and do, I suppose. And and bonsai's never going to be like a mass hobby. It's not going to be something that everybody does, because like I said, it does take a certain type of person to be able to do it. There's the commitment side of it. There's the ability to withstand that pressure, which a lot of people can't, and they'll fold under it. And just the appreciation of what it takes to do a bonsai is not for everybody. So yeah, it's, I don't know where I was going with that, but anyway. Right, so have you got anything else you want to, any final messages for people?
No, I'm sure people have had long enough trying to understand what I'm saying with my accent.
No, I just guess half the time. Okay, all right, well, thank you very much.
I'd just like to say, from probably most of the people here in the live chat, a big thank you to you for actually doing this tonight. I know you hate people giving you praise and credit, but tough shit. You've done a great job. It's great. Even the fact that you started these streams,
thank you,
to help people through the whole sort of COVID nightmare that we're going through at the minute.
Okay.
It's
all right.
Really appreciate.
More important than that.
Peter.
What's that?
You're trying to cut me off, but thank you.
More important than that, what are you drinking tonight?
Oh, I've had a couple. So we have Bull House, which is a local brewing company close to me here. And we have Kinniger, which I had before, which is a one in Donegal. So I like my craft beers to be pretentious.
Yeah, well, okay.
I do drink Guinness.
All right. Thank you very much, Ian. I'll be in touch. Cheers from everybody.
Okay. All the best, man. Bye.
All right. Well, that was Ian. And it looked like it all went smoothly, which was impressive. So all good. So thank you very much to Ian and to Alex for joining us, and to everybody who I've not been really kind of like keeping up with the chat. I'll just have a quick look now. I think there was one question from Dean, which I think pretty got much answered. Where was it, Dean? Jesus Christ, there's a lot of chat. I'm going to have to go through this, mate. So yeah, Dean, one of the questions. Oh, okay, so we've got a couple of questions early on, then they stopped. As someone who aspires to, this is from Ray, to push your practice of bonsai to a high level, how do you prevent that stress and pressure from diluting the joy of bonsai for you? So obviously doing bonsai as a job was particularly stressful to begin with. As we were sort of saying with Ian, like travelling around to a lot of places where there isn't a lot of sort of long-term relationships and the feedback. And having to kind of do work with people that you don't necessarily like personally can be a bit stressful. Seeing trees that you've worked on or invested a lot of money into sort of die can be a little bit stressful. But to be honest, I've never really, like recently over the last 5 or 6 years, I've basically done everything. I lost 30, 40, 50,000 pounds worth of stock that I spent 5, 6 years working to build up. I throughout my apprenticeship, I saved money, little bits of money here, I did little bits of money there. I got into debt when I first came back to the UK, spent all on kind of stock. Most of it died. Just got to suck it up and move on. And that's one of the lessons that bonsai teaches you. And it toughens you up in that sense, because you just have to accept it, and move on. So what do I do for stress relief? I go down the allotment and get dirty. Enjoy 1 or 2 beers of an evening. Watch football. Just do anything. Just kind of like take your mind off some of the stresses of bonsai. But ultimately, it's that getting up early in the morning, going out, touching the trees, looking at how they've improved and how the work that you've done on them has improved them, which really kind of keeps you going. And on the personal relationship sides, getting texts, getting emails from customers, asking questions, and you helping them along, and just seeing their trees improve year after year after year. That's kind of like how you sort of deal with the stress. I think that kind of answers both Ray's and Dean's question there, I think. So I can't see any more sort of questions. So thank you all for for the messages and stuff like that, and stuff. I'll go through them later. But yeah, it's mental health is something which is affecting us all at the moment, and the stress of it all, and the stress of working on live streams and all the crap that I've had. This is where my stress comes from, not from trees, of figuring out how to do all this kind of stuff. But equally, that's a learning process, so it's all good. So yeah, if we are feeling particularly stressful in our sort of daily lives, just get out there and work on the trees. Just touch them. Just go around and just fondle the trees, just fiddle with them, and you'll feel better. And it's just about taking that kind of like looking at the positives that you have in your trees as well, rather than trying to sort of all the negatives. But anyway, we've been going on for plenty long enough, or over the hour and a half mark. So I'll say thank you all for tuning in, and yeah, cheers. The only other thing to say is I know that we had Alex on, who is a recovering alcoholic, and some of you out there are recovering alcoholics, and I used to verge on the edge of alcoholism, but it's always nice to have a peculiar. I thought it was quite an appropriate beer for this evening, so I'm going to drink this, and then not look at my phone for the next couple of hours. Anyway, cheers, and good. Stay healthy mentally and all that, and look after your trees. Right, cheers.